But also, so we can talk about it on the show.
No, not that. Okay. Dude, my kids have been a terror tonight. I mean, it's a true living hell. Hey, good evening. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown live before lock. Denver Broncos, LA Chargers. Dave Loughran and Greg Ehrenberg taking you all the way up to lock. Happy to have you with us. What are you laughing at? Jordan, you all right? You got to put on a face, brother. You know, been a rough one. I'll tell you that much.
You know what I've never heard somebody say? Never once in my life. It's one of the main reasons that I have no interest in having kids. I've never heard somebody say, hey, I've got a couple of kids. Things are going great right now. Never heard that once in my life.
Really?
Never once heard in my life.
See, that's crazy. I see it the other way around. I think people want to mask that it's hell inside the house. And that's what Facebook is for and all that stuff. I'm convinced that anyone who posts like constant happy family pictures is miserable. I swear, dude. Anyone who sends that, by the way, stop with the Christmas postcards, everybody. Just post one picture on Facebook, say Merry Christmas. I get one of those, I look at it, I say, oh, that's nice. It goes in the trash. Then my wife takes it out and says, you can't do that. Straight in the trash. I don't need it flooding up the refrigerator. It's very nice. I haven't seen you in 7 years. You and your family look beautiful. Merry Christmas to you too. What am I supposed to do with this thing? Plus, when do I take it down? Let's get rid of Christmas postcards, okay?
I agree.
God, I've become cynical, but I don't get them. You sit down, you get a professional picture taken. Some people write a letter on the back of it about their year. It's like, okay, good, nice.
I'll try and you got to do. You got to wear like shorts and have nuts hanging out and just see if anybody catches it.
That would actually be go straight like Johnny Knoxville style when he used to play the old man with the balls hanging out of the shorts.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, hey guys, how are you? Hey, if you don't mind, take a single second to atone for your sins this evening. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. Actually, don't. Live before lock. 0 shelf life on this show. But we got to go. I told Matt this morning, I really like this game, Greg. I mean, I love games where you don't have like 1,000 true top tier players, like Eagles Rams style, where Cooper Kupp and Nakua and Kyron and Stafford and Hurts and Barkley, and AJ Brown, all of them are like 10-5 or above, and you're just trying to figure out how to make it work. It's not to say that we all have different players, but I like these type of slates a little bit more. This is a fun one.
Yeah, and it's also some of the ones where you run lineups through the Sims. You look at some of your top lines, you're like, oh, look, I got one that leaves like $3,000 in salary on the table. What I like about these slates is you get more opportunities for unique lineups. It is really hard on some of those ones that you meant. Well, they might be better games on paper, like Bills playing the Ravens or something like that. You kind of know, like, hey, you're going to get pretty good games out of Josh Allen, out of Lamar Jackson, and then 80 people or plus are going to tie for first place. More often than not, that is not what happens on slates like these ones.
Yeah, I think you're right. But we're about to find out because we've got about 50 minutes or so until lock. Chris Williams, thank you as always for gifting those memberships and the super chat. Just getting my atoning out of the way, my man. Getting some stuff done around here. Anyway, let's get into it. So I wasn't really getting a ton of Cortland Sutton, the captain, earlier in the day. And I said to Matt, I was like, listen, I'm just going to boost this guy. We always run updates on projections throughout the day and everything, right? Like you knew things would change. Now Cortland Sutton's my highest exposed captain. I'm not surprised. Like the 4 guys I have the most of at captain: Cortland Sutton, Ladd McConkey, Justin Herbert, and Bo Nix. Usually I don't get this much quarterback, but it makes sense on a slate like this. Plus, if you're not super worried about the ankle on Herbert, this is a guy who actually has mobility. So does Bo Nix, even though he hasn't run a lot lately. The question after that becomes, all right, if you're not playing those guys at captain, what are you going to do? You could go Javonte Williams. But he's not cheap. You could go with Kamani Vidal and hope that he sees an expanded role, but it's not a great matchup. Devon Vele. You could even go with a kicker. I'd almost argue that in this spot, I like kickers most. This sounds crazy, but I almost would argue I like the kickers most behind those 4 guys at captain.
I don't disagree at all. Cause I mean, I look at my lineups that I have built out here, and I'm not playing the kickers at captain really, although I actually do have a couple of kicker captain lines, but like not significantly. It's not my top projected lineups either. When I go look at the flex, I have a ton of the kickers, Lofty. I have, let's see, I have Dickers in about half my lineups, and I've got Will Lutz in about 40% of lineups. It's something that happens pretty frequently in our sims over the course of the NFL season. And even though there's been a lot of slates as of late where I've been overweight to the kickers, this is the first time it's been this extreme in, I don't know, a month or so.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's probably one of these slates too, where the value just isn't that good. Devon Vele's fine. I have no problems with guys like Troy Franklin, but if you were to actually like parse through all of these guys sub, say, Javonte Williams, what are you really working with here? Because there's a bunch, as Matt likes to play it, and I love the way he puts this because it's perfect representation of how the slate breaks down. Bunch of part-time players, Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston. I'd argue Quentin Johnston's overpriced in this spot, but like, sure, full-time player, Javonte, kind of, not really. There isn't a full-time running back on this slate between him, Gus Edwards, and Vidal. McLaughlin's out, but you don't know how much work Estime is going to get. I think the best guy down there is Josh Palmer because he's going to play a ton and clearly has, multi-year rapport with Justin Herbert. But again, get below those guys, scroll down past those guys, I should say. And you're talking a part-time player in Marvin. That would be perfect for you to tell people your origin story for how you got into DFS.
Exactly. It's another thing to add to the potential ways the stories could go.
Exactly. Marvin Mims, Stone Smart. I have no clue what's going to happen with him, with Hayden Hurst back. Vele, Troutman, Troy Franklin, Nate Atkins. You get the point here.
Yeah. Also, people who have no clue what they're talking about, they're going to think of origin stories if it's like the beginnings of a superhero movie, which is also equally hilarious.
Yeah, which it's not. The anti-hero. Yeah. Anthony Davis. I love my kids too, man, but anyone would be full of shit if they act. Oh, that's what I was saying. You're full of shit if you act like it's all great all the time. Not with a 3 and a 1-year-old. My God. She fell off the couch, landed on her shoulder. I thought she broke her shoulder today because she was on the arm of the couch. Fell off, smacked her face. Didn't even get her hands out to catch her fall. Like, have I not taught you better than this?
That's very weak survival instincts. That's not survival instincts that were surviving hundreds and thousands of years ago.
Exactly. This kid will get up and do a full, beautiful 360 over the ottoman onto the floor and land it. And I'm like, yes, you're the greatest. And now she can't put her hands out to break a fall and ironically, misses gymnastics class because of it. I talk about the irony. But do you have a preferred cheap option down here? Are there guys that you look at and you go, man, I really like them, or I'm just trying to spread things out?
So what price point are we calling cheap?
Let's say sub dead zone. So sub quarterbacks.
All right.
Sorry, below backup quarterbacks. You know what I mean?
Okay. So we'll go below, because it's obviously the kickers. So we'll go below kickers, talking skill position players then.
Definitely. Cause I like the skill position players.
All right. So,
or I'm sorry, I like the kickers.
Yeah, I like the kickers the most. If we're going really cheap, then yeah, I'm going to go to Stone Smart at $4,200. He's not terrible. I know that we are going to have a little bit healthier of a situation with the pass catchers for the Chargers this week, but I'm getting Stone Smart in a pretty decent amount of lineups. And I don't think that he's terrible. Like, he seems somebody who's actually capable of catching passes downfield, which often is not the case for backup tight ends.
Yeah, but here's the question I have.
Mm-hmm.
We saw last week Will Dissly was out.
Yep.
This week Hayden Hurst is back. So now that Stone Smart has come up in price, what do we do? Like, I mean, Matt made some good points today. It's like if Hayden Hurst is out there, you have Stone Smart who would line up in the slot a decent amount, but in order to do that, you'd have to take Ladd McConkey off the field. You're not going to line him up outside. The props on him aren't even bad. Like there's still 31.5s out there on Stone Smart. So now the question is just like, is the prop market overreacting to what we've seen, or are they underreacting to Hayden Hurst being back? Or is this where it should be? This to me is one of the toughest spots of the slate because Stone Smart could be a stone zero in a game like this.
He could be, although that's kind of the case for a lot of the cheapish players that you'll see on some of these slates. But I'm not that concerned that Hayden Hurst is going to be massively involved. First off, he hasn't played in over a month. So that in itself, I think, is reason to think that he might not have a massive workload. But then also, he hasn't had multiple targets in a game since September. So even when he was last playing, he wasn't massively involved. Last time he played against Denver, nothing. 0 targets. Game after that against Cleveland, 1 target, catches it for 6 yards. And by the way, that was another month in between games. So he's been hurt multiple times this year. Even though he's back and healthy, it's hard for me to envision him just playing a total full workload, considering the last time he came back from injury, he was hardly playing.
But Will Dissly was active.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have any comp, like we don't have anything to go off of here.
Let's see. The last time that I'm trying to find if there was a game where Dissly was, have there been any games where Dissly was out earlier in the year where they were both active?
Nope. Not from when I don't believe so. No. So it was Dissly. No. Nope. Dissly played every game up until last week.
Let's see. Were there any games where Smart and Dissly were both active behind? Where Smart and Hurst were both active behind Dissly that were somewhat recent. That's also going to be hard because how long Hurst has been out for.
Yeah, Hurst has been out for a while. He came back after missing 2 games, played limited snaps because Dissly was getting them. Stone Smart can't block. It's a tough spot at that price point. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you, but I will say that at that price point, I probably give him a slight negative boost. Matt wore off on me this morning. I'm willing to give credit where it's due. He made some really good points on the strategy show. Now, for what it's worth, I don't think I'm going to have a ton of Stone Smart. Like right now I have, what do I have? 19% at flex.
I have 22%, and that's the one I have the most of. So I should also add this with a qualifier. You asked me who is my favorite one below this price point of the skill position players. And I don't have one that I'm getting to a ton, mostly because of how much of the kickers I have. But the one I have the most of is Stone Smart, and that's with 22% of him.
Yeah, and I think that number is okay. I really do. I think that number is perfectly fine. Any more than that, I'd get a little bit nervous for sure. I'm looking at some of these cheap options, and with Denver, you can kind of make the argument for a bunch of guys here. It's not pretty. Cortland Sutton's clearly the only like legitimate full-time player. But I look at a guy in Troy Franklin, and he's not going to see the field as much as Sutton. He's not going to see the field as much even as Vele, really. But he's been consistently targeted every week. Now, they're not the most valuable targets. There's not a ton of downfield stuff. He's a 3rd-round rookie, right? There's a 3rd-round rookie who struggled in training camp to the point where they're talking about like he might not see the field at all this year. But, last few games, he has 5, 5, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 6, 3 targets. At $3,000, that's not that bad. I still think the best option down here, given what we know as far as snap counts go and routes run, and I know he was only targeted once last game, but Devon Vele at 4K is probably my favorite cheap option of the bunch.
Yeah, I have a little bit more of Stone Smart, but I also have 20% of Vele, so it's not that big of a difference between them. We do have Stone Smart projected. I believe it's a little bit better, unless there was a projections update on the site. I view a lot of these guys as being pretty comparable. The same with Marvin Mims. I think Marvin Mims is pretty comparable to Stone Smart and Deshaun Vele as well. So I just kind of lean on the Sims and just look and say, hey, how much of these guys do I get? And it's not giving me any big stands. I'm right around the field on most of these guys.
By the way, the Sims are throwing me off with the columns moved to the right on exposure.
Yeah, so there were some UI updates. The one I really like is we added a value column to our projections page. So you could see what players are projecting for from a points per dollar sense. But yeah, I'm with you. I almost feel like I'm dyslexic because I've been looking at it the other way so long where it's just force of habit. I look at it and I'm looking at the wrong place on the page.
Like we'll be used to it by tomorrow. But
yeah,
every time I look at it, your eyes immediately go to that like fourth row in from the right, and it's not there. And I keep having to try and figure out where it is. By the way, guys, it's like a hybrid sale. It's Christmas plus celebratory. Aaron Costa taking down the Millie over on FanDuel. Was that the FanDuel live final that he took down?
So FanDuel doesn't do a live final. It
was the fantasy football championship.
I don't think so. I'd have to look back at what it was. I think
yeah,
it was
there you go.
Online.
Fantasy championship.
Was it the? Oh yeah. So it was because they do two different ones. They do, which now it's weird because they do also like an online championship, but this is also an online championship now. So, but yeah, this was the equivalent of the FanDuel live final that he won the $1 million in.
He said a lineup taken straight from the Sims. Look at that, baby. That's our third Millie winner this NFL season. That's pretty amazing, right? Bunk Cakes won it. DC, I think is his name. I know he's the poker players in the poker news for him winning that. Rocking the Stokastic avatar, rocking the tools. And now Aaron takes it down. That's 3 in the last like 2 months or so. So it's been awesome. The promo we got going on right now, it's not going to be for everybody. Some of you are wanting to just use single lineup sim, but if you're MME, especially with these showdown slates with everything coming up, $179 for Sims Max, right? That is NFL Sims Max. Jordan Control. It's every single tool we have. I mean, if you're trying to like legitimately take it to the next level, this is the way to do it. $179 may seem like a lot, except it's $200 a month. And this is both months. This is through the Super Bowl. This isn't $179 for 1 month. This is the rest of the NFL season in earnest, everything, all the way up through the Super Bowl. And we have football, I think, like 9 of the next 11 days or 9 of the next 12 days. Plus Monday Night Football in the playoffs, wild card, divisional round, championship round, Super Bowl, all of that stuff, all of these slates, back-to-back weeks with Saturday football. If you're wanting to jump in, this is not only buy a month, essentially grab a month and get one free. It's the 1 month is less than it would normally be anyway. So $179 for the next 2 months total, all the way through the Super Bowl. I mean, there's no better way to build lineups than with these Sims, especially when you can run the 10,000 man field or contest field.
Yeah, and it covers all the slates. So early slate, afternoon slate, all of the showdowns. DraftKings lists a showdown slate for every single game each Sunday, and all of those are in the Sims tool as well. So if you were to count up all the slates, it's actually probably like, I don't know, 200 something slates or something along those lines.
It's a ton. Yeah, it's a ton. Links down there. Use the promo code CELEBRATE. Celebrate at checkout. That's all you got to do. Promo code CELEBRATE at checkout. Lock up the rest of the year, right? Non-active Max users, but if you've been with us before, you can jump back in. Can you upgrade if you're at like a core membership or something?
That would be a good question for
I don't know.
News God.
Yeah, we could ask him.
Yeah, I'm sure if you guys want to, you could email support and we could figure something out if you're on a core package right now.
For sure. And if you wanted to get the core package free, the $100 monthly one, link in the description. Sign up with any of our sportsbook partners. Follow those 4 simple steps. Collect all your bonus bets over there, and then email us and let us know which subscription you want. So you get as many months free as you sign up on Sportsbooks. A lot of different ways to get the tools here. But the Celebrate promo we got going on is a damn good one to close out the year. All right, so as I dig into this slate a little deeper, I don't know if I really have any interest in trying to get contrarian on one like this. And what I mean by that, Greg, isn't like the full lineup build, but I mean it captain. I mean, Sutton, McConkey, Herbert, and Nix. You could definitely make the argument for Javonte, no doubt. I think, like I mentioned it earlier, I think you could make the argument that a Cameron Dicker or a Will Lutz at captain isn't the craziest idea in a game that has what, a 41-point total, two good enough defenses. It's doable. I don't even think Chargers defense is insane if you wanted to get a little bit off the wall. I have a little bit of it, not a lot, but Bo Nix recently has looked like more of a rookie than he did all year. This guy's thrown 5 picks over his last 2 games. He threw 2 picks combined in the 10 games previous. So you're seeing that. And when you look at the games that they've won recently, week 14 prior to the bye against Cleveland, and then last week against the Colts, the defense buoyed them, right? So Broncos defense too. They had 5 takeaways last week against the Colts. 5. Granted, should have been 4 if Jonathan Taylor didn't just put the ball down at the goal line. And they picked off Winston twice with pick sixes in that game before that. Now, Herbert has thrown the fewest interceptions in all of football this year. Only the Bills have less turnovers as a team than the Chargers. But what I'm getting at is kickers and defense on this slate. I'm not getting away from that at all.
Defense. So I prefer the kickers to the defense. I assume it's the same for yourself. The one point of hesitation I have with the defense is they're both kind of popular today. So while I have some exposure to them, it's less than the field because we've got both these defenses around 20% owned. It is, let's see, I think it's 19% for the Chargers defense and 17% for the Broncos defense. That's a pretty healthy amount of defense ownership. So I'm underweight to both of the defenses individually relative to what the field is doing with them.
I have, let's see. What did you say ownership was? 15% on Broncos?
17% on the Broncos, 19% on the Chargers.
Okay. I have about, I'm pretty much with the field almost exactly on both of them. You know, if there's one guy that ends up burning me because I have way less than the field and just way less than, just not a lot at all, it would be Quentin Johnston. I have a lot more Joshua Palmer than Johnston. I'm getting a $2,000 discount on a guy who week over week, you don't know if it's going to be Johnston or Palmer getting the target share. Saving that $2,000, if that gets me up to another Cortland Sutton or a McConkey or a Herbert or a Nix, to me, it feels like a no-brainer.
It's the Chargers running backs for me. We got Gus Edwards and Kimani Vidal each projected for around 20% ownership. And at their price tags, $7K for Gus Edwards, $6,800 for Vidal. We've got the kickers. Let's see, are the kickers projected? Yeah, we've got both kickers projected better than Vidal and Edwards while also being cheaper. And then the ownership also not being wildly different between the kickers and the Chargers running backs. So that's the one that would kill me, is if you get like a 20+ fantasy point game out of Edwards or Vidal.
I'd get crushed from that too. If we're being honest, it's the big 4 for me. I just have a ton of today. And I have a decent amount of Javonte as well. And I think, you know why I think that's happening too, Greg? I'm looking over it and I'm going, all right, well, Greg Roman, this guy has just refused to throw to his running backs. So at least Javonte has some pass catching upside. None of these guys are full-time players, but at least with Javonte, you know that the guy can get out and have 4 or 5 targets in a game. That's more appealing. Like Gus Edwards is entirely touchdown dependent. I saw it this morning when I was reading something on him. He doesn't have a single game with double-digit DraftKings points this year. That's insane. It's not a single game with 10 fantasy points. He's going to go for 30 tonight. Just watch.
I'm trying to. How many games has Dobbins been out for now?
Enough.
Yeah, there shouldn't be that much of a ceiling there. There shouldn't be. Not super involved in the pass game, not an efficient runner of the football. He's also in a backfield now where he's going to be sharing snaps with somebody. So I don't think it makes all that much sense to play him, especially when you consider he's somewhat popular on the slate. There's just other guys who look better.
Would you rather have Edwards or Vidal?
Vidal, because his production is going to come from, for the most part, from receptions and through the passing game, which is going to present itself a little bit more upside. Nothing else than just because of the PPR side, but ultimately I'm underweight to both of them.
So am I. I'm underweight to all of the running backs outside of Javonte, I think. Pretty
I was
much
really high on Javonte this morning. Part of that was because he was projected for really low ownership. And yeah, I'm still slightly overweight too. I'm not as aggressive as it was earlier today, but earlier we had him project for I think 1% captain ownership and like 20% ownership in the flex. When it was those kinds of numbers, and I was running lineups for the shorts that I do, where I just run the sims and go over some of the players I get the most exposure to, it was a lot of Javonte Williams this morning. And as his ownership came up, it came down a little bit. But I agree with you. He's definitely the best overall looking running back by a mile.
It's a hell of an interesting game too, because you've got the Chargers coming off an ass beating at the hands of the Bucks last week in LA. Well, not even like it was on Sunday, right? And it's a short turnaround. Jim Harbaugh, when asked about it, did not mince words. Like, he was pissed. And I don't blame him for it. They're 8-6. The Broncos are 9-5. Chargers won the first game in this series, same division. Because remember, this game was flexed to tonight. This game wasn't supposed to happen tonight. I think it was supposed to be, I don't know, like Falcons, Giants or something. I think that's what it was supposed to be. Got flexed out. I'm actually interested in 5-1 builds as well. Like 5-1. What's that?
I was going to ask for which particular side,
or just either. For either, because as much as we want to think we know how to predict these games, we've seen wild stuff happen on some of these primetime spots, right? Like really wild stuff this season and last season. But I think you could go 5-1 on either side. I lean 5-1 Chargers only because Bo Nix recently has been turnover prone and Justin Herbert protects the ball. He's a lot more protective of the football.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what my top lineups are. It's funny, actually. I look at my top 10 lineups by Sim ROI. A couple of them are 5-1 Chargers onslaught stacks. By far, my most popular build is 3-3s, 3 players on each side. But yeah, as I look through my lineups in the Sims, I'd say 1 out of every 8 of them or so is a 5-1 Chargers onslaught.
Really? Okay. I like it. I have no problems with it. I have a single entry lineup with a 5-1 Chargers.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that. Anthony asked, is fading quarterbacks tonight really stupid? I mean, no, but the path is narrow to get there if you fade them. I'm not saying it can't happen. We've seen it before. But like if you're fading quarterbacks, you're probably going to want to be overweight on kickers and on defenses. I'm not saying you, what's that?
And running backs.
And running backs. Yeah, right. Of course. But I'm saying a lot of times people fade quarterbacks and the immediate thought is like, I just got to jam running backs, which yeah, obviously that's helpful. But that could be because the defenses have a big game or because the kickers end up, producing 15 points each. There's a lot of different ways you could go. I'm not fading quarterbacks, obviously. I'm not even really underweight on them. But I'll tell you right now, Anthony, I could definitely get burned by a super low scoring game.
Here's the biggest problem with fading the quarterbacks for this game is we talked at the top about how you don't have the real star fantasy producers in this game. As a result, the salary is a lot more flexible. I have lineups that are using both of the quarterbacks that are leaving a couple $1,000s in salary on the table. If you avoid the quarterbacks, you need 6 other players to outscore the quarterbacks in those lineups in all likelihood, because it's not that hard to build lineups that leave a lot of salary on the table with the quarterbacks. And to me, it's pretty unlikely the QBs aren't going to be, they don't have to be the highest scoring player on the slate, but are they really not going to be one of the top 6 or for FanDuel purposes, one of the top 5 scoring players on the slate? That's pretty unlikely to me.
Right. At the same time, I guess if you built like a Sutton and McConkey lineup without the quarterbacks, and those are the only guys that do anything, and you had Edwards or Vidal in there and a Javonte or something with kickers and D, it's It's not crazy, but I'm just not really getting funneled to much of that. And I'm willing to make adjustments when I think it's necessary. But I also I like that Herbert and Knicks have the ability to move a little bit. You know, they're more mobile than you'd think. How mobile is Justin Herbert? 4 days removed from another game, and you know, a week and a half removed from another ankle injury. I truly couldn't tell you, but I still have a lot of interest in those guys today, for sure.
How concerned are you about Herbert's injury, especially when you consider that he came into the season with a foot injury?
Not that worried about it. I don't think those injuries are anything. There's no connection there. Yeah, this guy's also just a flat out warrior. Like, quarterbacks don't get enough credit sometimes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has and you can be like, yeah, well, the refs have won it for them. Look, I'm not a Chiefs fan. Big Andy Reid fan, not a Chiefs fan. Not even the biggest Mahomes fan. But this is the second time he's had a grade 3 high ankle sprain, and he's going to play the very next week, Greg. And Herbert's the same type of player. Like, Trevor Lawrence is the same type of player. Those dudes will really play. Josh Allen is the same type of player. Those guys will play through anything. And do I think it might keep him from being 100%? Yeah, maybe, but they'll probably shoot him up with something good, right?
Yeah, no doubt. He's not gonna be able to feel his foot once the game starts. He'll be feeling it tomorrow. Tonight, though, he won't even know he's got a foot attached to his body.
That's my hope. Yeah, Money Maz, the Eagles did Andy Reid dirty. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. It was time. It was time. You know, you're there for 13 years. You get close without a Super Bowl. You have had a bad season the year before you got fired. That's just the way it is, man. If anything, they didn't do him dirty. He went on and won. I mean, shit, look at him. Sure, he's the happiest person in the world. He went to Kansas City. Sharon with a super chat. Can you run a Sims for FanDuel? Sure, Jordan. Throw up a Sims for FanDuel. Kamani Vidal's 7,000 on FanDuel, Greg.
7,000 is definitely a different scenario because of the fact that the min price is different over on FanDuel. And then you also get a little bit more favorable scoring for running backs where there's no PPR bonus. So that's something that's been consistent with my lineups from this morning, actually, is where Vidal doesn't look good on DraftKings. He's somebody who, whenever I've run Sims, either this morning when I was doing content or this afternoon when I was just screwing around with the tools and then also building out lineups for the show, I have made lineups that have ended up prioritizing Kamani Vidal as a value option over on FanDuel.
It's way different. He's the same price on FanDuel that he is on DraftKings, which is crazy.
Yeah, I wouldn't play him in the multiplier spot or anything like that on FanDuel. That's a pretty easy no. But I do think that on FanDuel, he looks way, way better than he does on DraftKings.
Well, and with FanDuel, you don't have that element of like, okay, I have to pay 1.5x these guys. It doesn't matter, right? Like you don't really benefit from playing him at the multiplier there. If he was 3,500 on DraftKings, that's a different conversation. I'd consider some of him in the captain spot, but it's different. Malcolm Revamp, I assume he's asking you. Eric, who are you overweight on in the flex on DraftKings and FanDuel?
Well, Eric? This is an extremely, extremely offensive question. So we have to know which one of us does he think is Eric?
I don't know, but the wild thing is, put me up there. Our names are right there. This is no secret, man. We're not anonymous.
Yeah. Malcolm, which of us do you think is Eric? I know you watch these shows regularly. I
was going to say, shout out to Malcolm. The guy's, he's here all the time.
He doesn't know who we are, though.
That's crazy, Malcolm. That's nuts that you don't know our names yet.
That's Eric Ronis in chat. Maybe he's asking me. That's very funny.
That's
the idea that somebody would leave a super chat and just ask random people in the chat. Like, imagine somebody left a super chat and was like, hey, Brandon Katz, who's your favorite quarterback from the slate today?
Who is the guy that used to always come in the chat and he started up his own channel in like some dank, dirty, dark basement? And
oh, yeah.
And he was just trying to like lure people away.
Yeah. I mean, the phrase in there can make people think he's doing something different than what he was.
Jordan's right. It was Anchor.
Yeah,
A-N like K-U-R, right? Jordan, or K-Y-U-R. Yeah, that's right. Jordan
like
never
lineups or something.
Jordan's best quality with this stuff is if you ask him any name, he'll remember it. Like when I can't think of anybody. It's pretty good stuff.
Oh, by the way, Eric's in the chat, so I'll answer this question just because I think it's funny. Eric, let Malcolm Revamp in the chat know also who you like the most in the flex today. Just throw it in the chat and we'll read it off. So for myself, I'll start with DraftKings and looking at my exposures. All right, so most overweight in the flex, it's the kickers, Cameron Dicker and Will Lutz. I know that's not super exciting, but those are the two guys I'm most overweight to the field to. The guy I'm most overweight to the field to in the flex on DraftKings is Ladd McConkey. All three of those players, I'm at least 10% overweight to. Now I'll select my top FanDuel lineups. And over on FanDuel in the flex, the players I come in most overweight to, it is the kickers, Cameron Dicker, Will Lutz, and then Kimani Vidal is the other one.
Okay. And then 1-2 said with a member, what's up 1-2 for member for 12 months. Eric, who's the nuke of the night? Nuke of the night? That's tough. I mean, I'm still tempted to just go Sutton or Ladd here. The reason, like, you look at Sutton, this guy, since he had, and I know that's a basic answer, but there's really, I'm not going to lie to you and be like, oh, it's Lucas Kroll, but clip that in case it is, Jordan, except the not going to lie to you part. The Sutton, since he had that 0 target game on a primetime game against New Orleans in the Dome, guy has, where he had 0, he has almost a 30% target share. Only Marvin Harrison has as many end zone targets as Sutton this year. Only Justin Jefferson, and if you watch the morning show, you know this already, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are the only ones with more red zone targets, and it's like an additional 1 or 2. So he's just like, he's the clear-cut, bona fide alpha in this offense. He is the only, Matt loves to state it this way, and I think it's great. Somehow we've had a ton of primetime Denver games this year. He's the only full-time player in the Denver offense not named Bo Nix, Greg. That's a crazy thing to think about.
One of the other things that's kind of been tricky about the Denver Broncos offense throughout the season is that when did Bo Nix actually start throwing the football? Because for the first handful of games, they very rarely threw it with him. I don't even think we saw a game where he had more than 220 or so passing yards for a little bit into the season.
Yeah, he got off to a rough start. Also had a brutal stretch of matchups to start out his career.
It was, oh, by the way, yeah, he didn't have more than 250 passing yards until, let's see,
Tampa Bay,
3, 4, 5, 6, Carolina. That was his 8th game.
Okay. Yeah. But who were his first games? It was like he had Pittsburgh and he went into Seattle to debut. Like,
it wasn't, so the first couple games were hard, but then it got easier after that. He was in Seattle against Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, the Jets, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Saints, the Panthers.
Yeah. He had some rushing upside in those games. Not the Jets game, but that Jets game was like the 12-9 game where it was crazy weather and stuff. Either way, I hear you. You've really seen that connection come on strong. So I'll go Sutton or McConkey. Those are the 2 top guys for me.
It's Ladd McConkey for me by a pretty wide margin of the top skill position guys.
Okay. Looking throughout the rest of this too, I mean, I don't know how you can, maybe you see this differently than I do, but I'm not really sure how you can get to these really cheap guys at captain.
It's just unnecessary for this slate. Let's see, who's the cheapest captain? I think it might be one of the kickers, who I only have a couple of lineups with kickers in the captain spot, but let's see. Yeah, I've got a couple of Cameron Dicker lineups, although I don't even think that he meets the qualifications of the cheap guys that you're talking about. I have 1 out of 150 lineups with Vele at captain.
Right.
It's just not needed. It's not needed for this slate. You can build lineups with the Ladd McConkey or with Justin Herbert at captain that still leave $1,000+ in salary on the table.
Exactly. That's where I'm at too.
My 3rd highest sim ROI lineup has Justin Herbert in the captain, and it is $2,500 in salary left on the table.
Really?
My fourth highest lineup projected by Sim RY has Ladd McConkey in the captain spot and leaves $1,900 in salary on the table. So it's like, what am I getting? If I was to swap out Ladd McConkey for like Vele in one of those lineups in the captain spot, it's like, then I'm leaving what, $6,000-7,000 in salary on the table or something.
Exactly. It's not sensible. What do your captain exposures look like up top?
Yeah. So at the very top, yeah, I have three guys on. So I'll include Bo Nix in this as well, though I am underweight to the field on Nix. I have him in 10% of lineups in the captain when he's projected for 15% ownership. But I really only have four guys that have significant exposure to: Herbert, McConkey, Sutton, and Bo Nix. And Bo Nix, I'm underweight to of those four as well.
Those are really the only ones for me too. Like I said, though, I have kind of trace amounts of the kickers in there too.
Yeah,
Like
a couple Dicker line. Yeah, my next most rostered captains are Cameron Dicker, Will Lutz, Javonte Williams. And those are all the players I have multiple lineups with a captain.
Yep. Bo Nix, I'm a little under the field on a captain too. McConkey, Sutton, and Herbert the most for sure. I'm okay with that, I think. I'm okay with those four, including Nix if you want to. Then it comes down a bit. What about flex exposure? Because this is the crazy thing. I have a lot less Bo Nix at captain. I'm under the field, but I have a ton of Bo Nix at flex. I mean, exorbitant amounts of Bo Nix at flex.
Let's see. Yeah, he's my most rostered player in the flex spot. He's in over 60% of lineups in the flex. So Bo Nix, still getting to a lot of them. It's just not as much in the captain spot. So I think on the whole, I'm a little bit overweight to Bo Nix if we're adding up the flex and the captain exposure, just not getting him in the multiplier spot as much. So I have three players that are more than half my lineups in the flex: Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey.
Who are your highest exposed? We always do this when we start to get close, just so people maybe joining in late can get a decent idea of where we're at here. Highest exposed cheaper guys. Is it still Stone Smart for you?
Yeah, although with that said, it's not like he's that much different than these other guys. It's Stone Smart, then Deshaun Vele, and then it is Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin. So the two I have the most of are Stone Smart and Vele. Both of them right around 20% owned. So I have a little bit more of Smart than I have of Vele, but it's a couple more lineups. And it's not like I have 40% of any of these cheap guys either. It's kind of rotating them around. And the Sims are getting me almost right in line with the exposure to the field. Like I look at the leverage column, it's like 0.1%, 0.5%. So it's very close to the field on these cheap guys, which I'm good with. I don't want to take a big stand on Vele or Smart or Marvin Mims or anything like that. I prefer to be really heavily overweight to the top quarterbacks, which, I mean, why am I saying top quarterbacks? The two quarterbacks, the top wide receivers, and then I just kind of align myself with some of the cheaper guys and then be underweight to the running backs.
That makes sense to me. That's where I'm at too. Yeah, just looking at it, Quentin Johnston, Gus Edwards, I have. All right, I'm not terribly under the field on him now that I reran. By the way, we updated the Sims at like 740, so I just went in and ran it again. I don't know if you did as well or you just locked yourself in, but I reran one more time to get these lineups in. And my exposure came up a little bit to Quentin Johnston. Not a lot, but it came up a little bit to Johnston and Gus Edwards, which I'm okay with because I was getting very little of them before. So at least now I have some, Greg, and I'm okay with that. But my highest owned guy in any of that range, like below the top four, is still Javonte Williams. I have 30% at flex. I don't have any at cap. Well, I don't have a lot at captain, but 30% Javonte at flex. I'm really just spreading these guys around.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty reasonable way to approach it. And I think Javonte Williams has significant upside. It's just so hard to know when Denver's going to trust him and actually break him out because we've seen games not all that long ago where he's been completely uninvolved in the offense. And then also there's times Sean Payton says one thing and then does something completely different as well.
Yeah, that's true. I have no clue what Sean Payton's going to do. I also don't know if they're going to do something different in the backfield with with the Chargers either, though. I really don't. Gus Edwards has been ineffective. So do you think it's possible that we just end up seeing more Vidal as a result?
I think we're going to see higher value of touches for Vidal than Gus Edwards, which is why I prefer him. I think that he's more likely to be getting the work in the passing game between the two of them. So that's why I prefer him to Gus Edwards. But it's hard for us to think either of them are going to have really big games. Vidal makes more sense on FanDuel than it does on DraftKings to the 7K price point. But I don't feel overly confident in the backup or what should be backup running backs.
I mean, I would feel that way too if they weren't down by like they were just down by 100 points last game, and Vidal was out there. You know, he's not a good pass blocking back, and they only threw to him, what was it, 2 times? I really thought he'd be used more, but then when you consider who the coach is, and when you consider who their offensive coordinator is, who is notorious for not throwing the football to running backs, I don't even disagree with you that there should be something there for Vidal. It's just kind of crazy that we haven't seen it yet, especially given that earlier in the year, he had a few really big catch and runs.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, the first touch he ever had this season, it was like a 21 or maybe even longer touchdown reception. I think that was the first ever touch he had in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say.
Let's see. 38 yards. 38 yards. Also, the only touchdown he scored came on the very first touch that he had. So, yeah, first time he went out there, 38-yard reception, brought it to the house for a touchdown. And yeah, it's mostly been dog shit since then, but we've got that one play to lean on, which is more than Gus Edwards has done.
Yeah, we got one. That's right. I don't know. I just finalized these. Let's see where we're at. I'll tell you what I have. 1 second here. All right. There we go. So, captain, now that I got these in, I have Ladd and Cortland Sutton at the top, both above 22%. Herbert and Nix at 18 and 10%. And then, yeah, Cameron Dicker, 5%, Javonte, 5%, Vele, 4%, Will Lutz, 3%, Chargers, Broncos, I got 1 or 2 lineups of those. That's pretty much what it is. It's just a few lineups with those other guys. And then looking at the flex, first of all, I don't know how big of a difference it's going to make with Patrick Surtain. He has one of the highest actual like shadow rates in the league, and you don't see that with a lot of corners anymore, but this guy shadows. And we've seen him do it a lot this year where he's dominated. The only time he didn't was against my boy George Pickens. But it didn't matter because he just committed pass interference calls anyway, so Pickens didn't even benefit from any of that. But Ladd McConkey's in the slot like 80% of the time. Cortland Sutton rarely lines up in the slot. 30 times, 30 snaps all season long. So Cortland Sutton, I'm sorry, not Surtain I was talking about, but Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer are the 2 outside guys. It makes you wonder, does Surtain does he stick with somebody like Quentin Johnston today? If so, I'd be happy to get away from Quentin Johnston in this spot.
I mean, I'm happy to get away from Quentin Johnston just because his price point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
His price point is ridiculous. He's $8,400 and still pulling ownership over on DraftKings. So, you know, it's hard to outright fade somebody on a 1-game slate, but I am underweight to the field to him. And then if you look at him over on FanDuel, Quentin Johnston is priced at $11,500 and still pulling ownership. So it's kind of it's actually, I think, relatively even more expensive from over on FanDuel, but there's just no way I want to pay $11,500 on FanDuel for Quentin Johnston. If I was hand building 1 or 2 lineups, you know, he shows up in like 8% of lineups over the course of me building out 150 and simming them. But if I was making a handful of lineups and I was trying to figure out who I wanted to play and invest my money in of those, Quentin Johnston would not be one of those guys.
How about Lil Jordan Humphrey?
I don't think I have any of the super cheap guys today.
I do. I have some Lil Jordan Humphrey today.
Let's see.
He's basically just the default pay all the way to the bottom guy. That's pretty
I
much
have
how I've gotten to
3% of him. So for
Okay.
all intents and purposes, not anything significant.
Yeah. And then how much Franklin do I have? Yeah, 4% Franklin. I have 6% Lil Jordan Humphrey. That's basically, where I'm at with these guys. 2% Lucas Krull. I have one lineup with DJ Shark. You kind of have to get a little sprinkle of those guys, though, Greg. Especially if you're playing a bunch of lineups, there's no way you can do it without having at least a little bit of those super cheap guys.
Yeah, I have like 2 to 3% of them, which is very, very insignificant. For the majority of people watching the show, I don't think there's a scenario where they need to be playing like Tucker Fisk or Lil Jordan Humphrey or Lucas Krull or really any of these guys for really cheap. Darius Davis, another one. I have 2 Darius Davis lineups. But once again, it's over the course of 150 lineups. These aren't guys that I would hand build and play in a single entry or anything like that.
Jake DeWitt said overpriced and owned equals smash bot for QJ. Yeah, probably. You're missing something. Now, overpriced and owned and a really bad matchup. Like Patrick Surtain's going to watch. He's going to slip and fall. Something like that's going to happen. He's going to trip on his shoelace and Johnson's going to have an 80-yard touchdown on the first drive. Ah, man. But no, you know what? It is. First King TV said he can't guard Johnston. I don't know if that's a troll or not. I assume that's a troll.
He can't, as in he's not able to, because that's certainly not true. Or saying he can't because it would be just ridiculous to shadow Quentin Johnston.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't. I mean, what's really the difference of moving across the field to Josh Palmer? I don't know.
We'll have to check their Madden ratings because that's apparently how teams make decisions now.
Yeah. Do you think that's true?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's too ridiculous to not be like, for ESPN reporter Diana Rossini, you wouldn't just make that up. That had to come from somewhere. But yeah, if you guys didn't see it, the Jets were apparently contemplating getting Jerry Jeudy in the offseason, but Woody Johnson, team owner, shut it down because of his Madden rating. I believe it.
Outrageous. Travis asked, how do you all handle ROI boost you've already made when a new run of projections is released shortly before lock? Personally, what I do, and I don't know how Greg does it, if I'm running everything again and I think it's like a significant update is coming, then I will clear everything and redo a lot of boosts. If it's like a showdown slate where I know that nothing has really changed dramatically and I've only done 2 boosts, I'll still clear them out and I know I can boost them again or cap these guys again. I always want to see what I'm getting, Greg, before I start, making my own calls on that stuff.
I don't do a ton of boosts for showdown slates. It's just kind of, if I feel really strongly about something, it's like, oh, I want to have this guy for whatever reason I decide I think they're a good option. I just want to get them in, like 10% more lineups or something. I might do that. But for showdown, I just kind of run stuff the way I normally do. And I just upload whatever I end up getting to, because there isn't that much that I think you would want to change for some of these showdown slates. What's most important is just have quality lineups that aren't expected to be massively duped. Where I'm making more significant changes, certainly for NBA, where I have to situate my lineups for late swap news, NFL main slates, which also there could be some later news that's important, but also there could be more players for NFL that I also just have stronger takes on. I don't often find for myself on one game slates, Lofty, that I'm making a massive amount of boosts. Also, I don't get these situations where it's like, oh my God, I have 80% of this guy and it's totally outrageous. If I have 80% of a player in a showdown slate, it's usually like a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen type, and I'm almost always fine with that.
For sure. It's funny because somebody had mentioned, who was it? Was it Jake? I don't know. Somebody said, Laffy, by the way, Hurst has the highest simmed player ROI in the Sims. Right, which is actually interesting though, man, because he has the highest simulated player ROI, and you're still probably not getting to a lot of him. And the reason is because he's just mostly unnecessary, despite the fact that he has it. If this again, man, if this was an Eagles-Rams game or something crazy with all of these expensive players, you'd probably be getting more of those guys. You just don't really need them today.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is if you were to look at your lineups and say, oh, I want more of these cheap players, for instance, like if you really aggressively bumped up Marvin Mims, it's just going to end up giving you more lineups that have like $7,000-$8,000 or something crazy in salary left on the table. If you're trying to force yourself to get to more of the cheap guys today.
I got a little Mims today.
Yeah, a little bit. But like if you were to go in and say, oh, I want to have Marvin Mims as a core option for me, and you just boost him up so that he shows up in like 30 to 40% of lineups, it's probably just going to give you lineups that are leaving an absurd amount of money on the table. And then you're rooting for Marvin Mims to outscore the quarterbacks.
Definitely. Hey, appreciate you guys. We're locked. Have a great rest of the night. Remember, we got it down there. It celebrates the promo. Take advantage, man. You're getting literally the rest of the season all the way through the Super Bowl. Sims Max, not core, not light, not essential. Sims Max for less than the price of 1 month. That's every. I mean, you want to talk about, okay. Someone this morning was like, man, once I started using the Sims, I realized that I felt dumb not using them. And it is an interesting way of looking at it. Once you grasp the concept, you're not really going to go back to another way of building lineups because it no longer makes sense. This way you can test drive it for, a massive discount on what you normally would. And you're going straight to the top with the Sims Max all the way through the Super Bowl with a ton of slates on the horizon. But I appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of the day. Greg and I'll be back here tomorrow. Sims lineup, or Sims, what we got? Tournament strategy. That's it. Tournament strategy show tomorrow, 10 Eastern. Then we got Saturday football, Sunday football, Monday football, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Come on. Let's go. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning. Peace.